What's up, everyone? Today we got Miss Hannah Knecht. Now, she is one of our Nxt Era tutors. She's a lovely woman. She's a homeschooler, a previous homeschooler herself. Miss Hannah, if you could just introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure thing. So I am Hannah Knecht. I'm located in Melbourne, Florida, and I am a homeschool graduate. And I became a certified teacher with an elementary education degree right out of college. And then I pursued my master's degree in curriculum development and let me say it again. I pursued my master's degree in curriculum development and instructional design. And I have been teaching for the past 16 years, both in person and online, for students in K through 8, as well as adult learners as well.
And your husband's in education as well, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, he was a fifth grade teacher for 19 years.
Wow. Yep. And I
Yes.
can see you're socially awkward because you're homeschooled. We can tell. So, if you could just right now, as parents watching, like take them back to when you were homeschooled as a kid yourself. I know it was a different time, and just kind of what it was like then compared to what we're seeing now.
Yeah, so when my parents, I am the first of four children. So I kind of was the guinea pig. And my parents tried out a few Christian schools in our area before they decided to permanently pull me out of school and homeschool. So my first experience with homeschooling was my mom teaching me how to read using Sing, Spell, Read, and Write, which was a fantastic curriculum for me because I loved singing and music, and being able to combine that with learning phonics was really fun. And my brother, who's about 3 years younger than me, even though he was two at the time, he just joined in as well. And so it was one of those things where she would do a lesson with me, but he was in the background, eavesdropping, listening in. And because of that, I think he got a really early start, and he was eager to learn and just ate it up. So he began reading pretty quickly through that experience. So back in the early 90s, homeschooling was a bit different. It was not as and accepted by the whole culture, if you will. And so I do remember like my mom being concerned if we were sometimes outside playing during the day. You know, would our neighbors call CPS because we weren't in school? And I do remember a few occasions where she would take us grocery shopping or something in the middle of the day when it was school hours. And I remember some of the looks from cashiers and that, like, why aren't you in school today? And we would say, oh, we're homeschooled, you know, and that. But there definitely was a little bit more of trepidation to be able to homeschool just because you were, you know, kind of trying to fly under the radar and at the same time do the right thing. My mom and dad were in Virginia at the time, and so they pulled us out for religious reasons. That was the legal way that they homeschooled us. But my mom was so vigilant to do end of year testing with us, with a certified teacher friend that she knew, and was always just really vigilant to look for curriculums that would, or curricula that would really be high standards, if you will. And she also was a stickler for us finishing the textbooks. So when I went to school and I was like, well, Mom, they don't go all the way through the textbook at the end of the year. She was like, well, in our homeschool, we do. And so we would finish the textbooks. And then I think what was so wonderful and unique was we had two other families in my early elementary school days who were also homeschooling, friends of my mom's. And so we would do a weekly Friday co-op. So they would take turns and rotate which mom would be the teacher of that day, and they would plan themed lessons for the group of us. Each of the families had three children, kind of about the same age groups. And so I can remember some fantastic experiences, a lot of hands-on learning, and that did give us that social interaction to socially learn with our peers, if you will. History and science were primarily kind of the focus. So I remember my mom like creating the inside of an ear in our living room that we like would walk through, and it was like a simulated experience about each of the parts of the ear. And I can remember another mom doing like Conestoga wagons and the whole westward expansion in her backyard. And I can remember another time my brother and I would, a lot of times we would prepare in advance, like some reports, and that would give us an opportunity to like read our reports in front of our peers and get some of that public speaking and that. So I remember my brother and I did a report on mollusks one time. So just those experiences really left a lasting impact on me, and I definitely have tapped into those just out of the box ways of learning for my own teaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what my early days were like. And then that transitioned, when we got into high school, my mom again was just looking for what was the best option at that time. And again, this is the late 90s, early 2000s. And we were utilizing Bob Jones University Press for a lot of our curriculum. I would say math and science in particular. And so at that time, Bob Jones was also offering a home satellite school. So I can remember we ordered a big satellite dish, and my dad put it up in the back of our yard. And we would get classes, live classes, every day through our television set, almost like three extra channels. And we would show up at that time. And Bob Jones was also catering to small Christian schools who didn't necessarily have teachers who were well educated in that particular subject. So science, so chemistry, biology, those kinds of things, physical science. And then we did our Spanish and French, foreign language through them. And we also did our math. So I can
Wow.
remember probably one of my favorite teachers was my Algebra 1 teacher. And I would show up every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because she would be teaching our lesson. And we did have the opportunity to email our teachers with questions. So that
Oh, that's
kind of gave my mom an opportunity to focus more on her strengths, which were the writing and the ELA, the reading piece of it. But she did rely a lot on this home satellite school for our curriculum in the science, the foreign language, and the math. And then another big piece of my high school experience was NCFCA, which was, we should probably look up exactly what it was, but it was the National Homeschool League for Homeschool Debate and Speech.
oh
And
wow.
yeah, and at that time, it was all across it's probably still is, all across the country. And my mom was a debater in college. And so that was a passion of hers to be able to like have us join a debate club and learn about policy from that angle and be able to go to tournaments all over the country. And my brother in particular, again, he's 3 years younger than me. That was what he wanted to do, was become probably an attorney or something like that. He is a successful attorney today. But so again, I really loved that, but it wasn't necessarily for the academic piece, it was for the social piece. I loved going to tournaments because it was 3 or 4 days straight with my peers where we got to not only compete against each other, but have lunch together and play games together and talk and hang out. And we also would end a lot of our tournaments with a swing dance. And so that was really fun. Again, early 2000s, I graduated from high school in 2004. So that kind of gives you perspective. about that time period, but just some really good experiences. And NCFCA did offer us the opportunity. A lot of our friends were online. So AOL was just coming into being, instant messenger. I tell everyone that's how I learned to type because I was so eager to be able to talk to my friends online. And I would meet them at tournaments, and then we would go home and we'd be able to keep those relationships going using instant messenger. And that was just really, really some great experiences in my homeschool experience.
All right, so I kind of want to go back to um, what you said at the beginning. Before I do that, though, what a great idea by your mom, though, with the debate. Not only are you gaining public speaking skills, something that is just a confidence booster in anybody, but as well as getting out, meeting different people. Just what an avenue to choose that's going to help you. And then your brother going off to be an attorney. That's, I mean, what a great idea from her. Um, I want to go back to when you were talking about the experiences you had with the ear and then the backyard. So we see that just from you having that hands-on approach, something that you're doing, you're enjoying it, it's lasted all this time. You know, the memory of it's still there. The experience, you know, made an impact. So one thing we see in the public school system is, and private school system is, it's just the lecture based format, right? When how important do you think it is to actually involve the kids in those hands-on learning, like experiments or whatever they are, to really drive home the message and the information compared to just the lecture traditional school model?
I think it's everything.
You
I
think it's
think it's
everything?
everything. As a teacher with 15 plus years of experience, I know that I can talk at a child and it's often going to go in one ear and out the other one. But if I involve the child, if they own part of their learning, not only are they engaged, but it's memorable.
Yeah.
It's going to help with retention. There's a lasting impact to that. And I think the number one thing my mom did for both myself, my brothers, and my sister was in inspire us to have a love for lifelong learning. Oftentimes students are like, well, I'm here, I'm going to learn in school, and that's it.
Yep.
And part of the homeschool experience was we were always learning, and there wasn't an end time to that learning. And I think also, I just encourage parents out there to fuel your students' curiosity. Um, Growing up, I can still hear my brother, you know what? You know what? Why? So that can be annoying, but allow that curiosity to fuel their growth and their learning and their education. It's so healthy for kids to be asking questions. And
No,
yeah, go ahead.
and I want from people listening to kind of get an idea of who you are. Um, well, backtrack real quick. So just the love of learning, that should be something that's carried on through life. I know in the previous conversation you mentioned you went through Dave Ramsey's course with your husband. It made a massive impact in your guys' life. That's just something that as we age, we tend to think, oh, I made it through college, I'm done learning, right? Oh, I made it through high school, I graduated, I'm done. But the ability to take in new information, try different things is something that is always going to allow you to elevate your life. So that love of learning, I just want to highlight that. That is so important because it does in every avenue of your life. If you have that love of learning, you're not gonna have a problem going research and you're gonna enjoy finding out the new information. But I want to bring it back to the story that you had when you were doing the personal finance class. Just for the parents listening, I want them to understand like who you are and how your heart is in such a great place and you were trying to help these kids and you ended up kind of getting punished for it. You don't have to go into detail, say the school or anything like that, but if you could just give them that story in like a little short form.
Sure. So I was a fourth grade teacher for 7 years. And when I first started teaching, I had a lot more autonomy than I did once I left the system. And in those early days, We would work our math curriculum, and there was a scope and sequence, kind of a timeline of when certain chapters should be covered. But pretty much, if you finished before end of year testing, after the testing, you kind of had 2 weeks to do what a lot of the teachers did, was like a math review time, and they would get creative with it. I remember they actually did like a math carnival and some things like that, which was really fun. But I saw it as an opportunity to teach my students about personal finance. And that's always been a passion of mine. My father is a CPA and an accountant, and you mentioned Dave Ramsey. That definitely influenced me as a young adult. And I thought, how could I bring in teaching kids about money? Because as I did get to know my students throughout the year, they were curious about real life stuff, how much things cost, why things were going up at the store, why talking to me about national debt. Like, I knew this was on their minds because they were hearing parts of it in the news, conversations with parents, things like that. And so there were the Schoolhouse Rock videos, and they kind of cover some overarching themes like taxes and personal finances and some things like that. So at that time, that was the resource I used. I love bringing music into teaching because that's just part of my personality. And so I used those songs and those song lyrics to build out a short 2 week curriculum for my students to actually investigate bills and to investigate what taxes were and things like that, and really have discussions and kind of investigative activities during that segment that was devoted towards math time. And my students loved it. They ate it up. And I started hearing from their parents that their parents loved it. And they were so excited that I was doing it as well. So I did that. I'm trying to think, it was probably my second or third year when I actually did it, because first year teacher, I normally just was following what my mentors and that were coaching me to do. But I believe my second or third time of doing it, I had my principals come to me and say, hey, you really need to stop doing this because we're getting requests. What had happened was parents wanted their children in my class because they wanted their students to be able to get this kind of information. And the other teachers weren't doing it. And because it wasn't a level playing field, the principals were very concerned that I was doing something rogue and not just complying to what the other teachers were doing. And so I was asked to stop doing that for my students. And it was disheartening because I realized that I really didn't have the autonomy to teach what I wanted to teach, or even what the students really needed, or what their parents wanted. It was truly, I needed to fall in line, do what I was told, and this was not part of the fourth grade curriculum.
That's crazy. And it's something like personal finance is that we have adults who don't even understand it. And you're trying to make an impact early on, which is at that age, it's going to be a lasting impact too. And they're shutting it down. Can you just kind of go? I know at the beginning you said that there was more constraints towards when you left the school system. What did you see in like the process, that were they cutting out information? Were they saying like they did with you, hey, you can only do this? What was kind of the difference that you saw from when you started to when you left?
It was more controls, internal controls of how I was teaching. So when I began, I was given the state standards of learning for each subject and a pacing guide. And basically, if I was teaching those standards at that pace, no question, totally fine. They had textbooks that I could use if I wanted to, or I could create my own resources. But as long as I was teaching those standards and building my objectives and my lessons around those standards, then there wasn't a problem at all. But what happened is, so I began teaching in 2009, and over the course of the next seven, eight, I taught 3 years of sixth grade after my 7 years of fourth grade. But I started noticing internal controls where it was you have to now teach only this curriculum. You're not allowed to bring in YouTube videos. You're not allowed to bring in your own resources. You need to do it this way. And I've taught in several states, Virginia, Colorado, Georgia, and Florida. And depending on the state, they have purchased certain curriculums and or curricula. And so in some of the states, they're even more strict. They want you to do this worksheet with this student and show this video, and your math lesson needs to look exactly like this teacher's math lesson. And if you walk in that classroom at 2:57 p.m., they need to be able to know that the other teacher is also teaching the exact same thing at 2:57 p.m. So it became my last year of teaching, I was handed 7 binders and I was asked to read a script to my students in order to teach math. I was not even allowed to use my own language to communicate the material or the content on the board. I was asked to read a script to my students. And for me, that was my big aha moment that I couldn't, and I had a wonderful principal at the time that I went to and I shared my concerns with him. And he said, Hannah, I'm seeing it exactly the way you're seeing it. My hands are tied. There is absolutely nothing I can do. And so it's out of our control as educators at this point. The system, I couldn't fight the system,
Yeah.
if you will. And so my mission has really been, I don't work for the system anymore. I work for parents.
I
And
love
that
that.
has just really brought a lot of joy and a lot of freedom to the way that I'm pursuing education.
No, and your way is, I mean, it's so much better to think a class is going to be scripted is just, it's robotical. It's not like there's no flow. There's nothing there that actually is supposed to be like how you have a passion for this. You should be able to dive into that using your unique personality, your unique way you go about doing things and drive home the information. For it to be scripted out, it's kind of scary. Now, obviously, you're passionate about the teaching in general, but you from an early on beginning of your teacher career, you want to teach them about financial knowledge. Now, I know you have I think you have a couple clips out right now. Can you go ahead and just talk about what you're doing right now and where the parents can maybe get some information from you?
Sure thing. So my YouTube channel is Learning Connections 1111, and I love being able to create content that is useful and helpful to whomever stumbles across my page. I started it 10 years ago when I was a middle school history teacher, and at that time my students were really struggling with doing their homework, and I only had 50 minutes with them a day. And so I really wanted to take advantage of the time that we had in class and not lecture at them. I wanted us to do primary source activities or games or some really cool stuff in class. And so what I decided to do was take whatever I would be lecturing about and condense it down into 3 to 7 minute videos with just some interactive slides. And I created just some short videos, and that was my students' homework. And if they did their homework and then they came to class the next day, they got to participate in the activity that I had. And then they came to class prepared and ready with that content. And I also taught some note-taking skills with those videos as well. So that was the reason I started my YouTube channel way back in the day. But over COVID, several teachers stumbled across it and sent me some emails and said, hey, can I utilize some of these videos that I found? And I said, absolutely, go for it. And at that time, I was also working in some different schools that had like a hybrid model where I was teaching in person some, and I was teaching at home some during the 2020 through 2022 school years. And so at that time, I also developed math videos and grammar videos that would be helpful to offset what I was doing in the classroom. And again, teachers and parents have reached out and said, hey, I'm utilizing these videos and they're helpful. But then I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to offer a series on finance. So this past summer, I started animating and using my animation skills to create just some fun. They're all less than 10 minutes videos on some of the key concepts around financial literacy. And so that series is called, it's a playlist called Money Matters. And it's just about some children ages 8 to 12 who are curious about money, curious about investigating our money systems and how things work. And they follow their questions in order to find out answers. And through the storyline, just share a lot of information that I think kids these days and even adults are probably really curious about.
No, that's amazing. And we actually, the one she was saying, we just did an interview with a certified financial planner, and that's the one that didn't get saved. But he was going into it, and he said, and I wanted to get your feedback on this. Miss Beth, do you have the notes? What were his top ones?
The vocabulary or the
Yeah.
principles? The vocabulary, he said his top vocab words to teach students about financial literacy were budget, debt, cash, stocks, bonds, cash flow, and then interest.
Where would you fall along a lot those lines? What do you have any other words that you would like to add into that? Do you think those are important?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually going to go to what some of the names of my videos are so that I could tell you. But one of them really is all on cash flow, and the other one is on budgeting and living within your means
Yep.
on personal finance. I think that's the key is bringing it home to kids when they realize how much things cost in today's day and age. I really think that's where we got to start because a lot of them aren't aware that we have to pay for water. We have
Yep.
to pay for electricity and things add up and they're a lot more expensive than I think we assume. So starting there, making them aware of bills, because that's also going to put the fire under them for, okay, well, if everything costs money, then how am I going to afford to live a life in the future? And how are my parents affording to live our current life? And I think that that's where we've got to start. And even just in inspiring conversations between children and their parents about these concepts so that parents aren't afraid to talk with their kids about the real life situations that they're going through.
No, without, and I would know because he said something where he's like, maybe you shouldn't, if they're younger, include them. And now when we were homeschooled, my dad was pretty much like the provider. My mom was with us. She did end up working online eventually full time as a teacher, which eased it up. But there was a time where, it was month to month, we're trying to make ends meet, but they did a very good job. They never stressed us out. But we understood like we're not going to go eat out with all the families after the baseball game. We're not going to if we did happen to go out, we're going to order water, but it wasn't in a negative way. They kind of involved us in it to where we understood we were part of the mission, and the mission was for my mom to be able to stay home and homeschool us, and that was what we had to do. So I thought they did a really good job with it, and we were young at the time because as we got older, my dad eventually his business started taking off, and my mom started working full time. But just being involved in those conversations and then being open about it, it seems like looking back on it, like I think it allowed me to understand going further into life, like right away, like, okay, hey, like you might not think ordering a drink at the restaurant adds up, but if you're eating out this many times a week over a course of years, it's going to be this much money. And when you said the cash flow, I think that's super important as well because if they can understand cash flow, it allows them to really build a budget that they understand, at least from my perspective, to what goes around their life. How much money is coming in, how much is going out. And if I'm budgeting exactly, that allows them to say, okay, well, I can budget this much over here, this much over here. But it also gives them the mentality of, okay, well, if this is where I'm at, I need to either make more money or cut expenses, you know? So it gives them just the perfect framework to begin with. And then he made a great point. He said, like, interest, it either works against you or it works for you. And like teaching them to kind of understand that. But the cash flow is something that I think could be easily incorporated into a homeschooling journey. You know, like it's something that can be involved with everyone in the family. Um, when it comes to teaching kids about finances, I'm asking you a couple of the same questions I asked him. What do you think is like the appropriate age to really start getting them involved with those conversations of like, hey, like this is our household. Let's say a kid wants a new baseball bat or something, they can't afford it. Having those conversations, but like my parents did in a way that frames it to this is where we're at. If you want it, this is what you have to do to earn money to get it, or something along those lines.
Well, parents are going to know their children best. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to say that there is a specific age. I know
Okay.
that my brother's maturity level came at a much younger age than like mine, if you will, on these matters. So as a parent, you discern whether your child is at the maturity level in order to talk to them about it, and also what their interest level is. But I know as a fourth grade teacher, most of my students were 9 and 10 years old. They were ripe and eager for this kind of content. They at that point had enough awareness of what was going on in their world and in their homes, that they were able to make those connections between money and the real life concepts that we were talking about, because some of them are a little bit more ambiguous and vague. And so being able to kind of hold that, there is just a sense of maturity that they need to have. And again, for a parent, you also really need to temper that with your own emotions. A lot of people are afraid, and there's a lot of fear involving money. And so, just kind of self reflecting about where you are and what your relationship is with money before you go ahead and bring your child into it, because you want that conversation to be one where you're giving your child peace of mind and not just projecting your own fear onto the situation. So, again, I'm just going to say it's a case by case basis, based on the family and the student.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Very, very political answer from your debate days. um, so now going back, let's go all the way back to your homeschooling experience. Now, obviously, in the high school age, you did the debate. A common misconception, which is kind of it's kind of fading out in the newer times we're in, is that there's not enough social opportunity for homeschoolers. Now, you were someone that was homeschooled in like the time where it wasn't considered cool like it is now. Um, what can you say to the parents that are listening to this when it comes to socializing their kids? Is it something they have to overthink? Is it really an issue, do you think? Or like what can you give them to kind of this open their eyes to your kid's not going to become a social outcast if he's homeschooled?
Well, in my experience, a lot of homeschoolers back from my day were extremely eloquent and
Mm-hmm.
confident and able to hold conversations with adults in ways that public school and Christian school students, private school students were not able to do. And so, even though I think there's even just it's a myth that we really need to blow up, because
Yep.
I think based on a student's personality, you're going to have introverts
Yep.
and you're going to have extroverts and you're going to have mixtures in between. And it
Yep.
not necessarily has to do with you being homeschooled. And again, as a parent, I think the best thing that you can do is start having conversations with your children early on so that they are talking with you at an early age. My grandmother was a kindergarten teacher for over 20 years, and she wrote a book called Slow and Steady Get Me Ready. And in 2017, I wrote the second edition called Slow and Steady Get Me Ready for Kindergarten. And one of the main themes in that book is start early with your child and having conversations about where you're going. Get in the store, have conversations about the different things on the shelves, have conversations about what you're seeing in nature, involving your child into a conversation at an early age. And I really think that that is what's going to enable them to blossom and grow. And yes, that is a conversation just between you and a child, but that is going to be able to be adapted into peer-to-peer connections. I do think it's important for children to be socialized and around other children. But in today's day and age, there's so many opportunities, whether online or in person, sports, extracurricular activities, church activities, volunteer activities and functions, whether they're interacting with other homeschool students during school hours or after school.
Yep.
I know ballet was a huge part of my elementary school days and middle school days. And so I would be a homeschool student during the day, but then at 4 o'clock every day, I was with my peers in a ballet class and had those friendships going on a regular basis. So I really think tap into what your child is interested in, whether it's sports or arts, the arts, or extracurricular activities, because they're out there. Facebook has a plethora of homeschool opportunities. And even if you just Google, homeschool connections or homeschool opportunities, co-ops near me, they're there.
No, they definitely are. And also, that brings me back to my, because like when people ask me, what's your number one regret about being homeschooled? I always say the same thing. It's that I had to wait till 3 o'clock for my friends to get out of prison to come play. You know what I mean? Like there's so many opportunities just in everyday life. And I think one issue homeschoolers families kind of, maybe make the wrong turn is they try to strictly only operate with other homeschooling families, which I don't think is the right, everyone's entitled to their own decision, but I don't think it's the right path. I think that it's great to interact with other homeschooling families, but it's also great to interact with all the other kids in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's kind of how you're going to learn about different people's situations, how to talk to different people, different cultures when you go to different people's homes. So I like to say that like it shouldn't just be if you're homeschooling that you're only going to deal with homeschoolers. Look everywhere because like even when it comes to the homeschool activities, there's almost in every single county there's got to be a couple homeschoolers, and then but there are opportunities like you said, the extracurriculars, the sports, the arts, whatever they choose, and if they're passionate about it, they can easily go in there and it's an easy conversation starter. They're shared interest. All the kids are going to be kind of talking around it. It's something I think is super important. Um,
I could not agree with you more. I think as a homeschool family, um, we have the opportunity to interact with others who aren't necessarily making the same choice about how they're schooling their children. And if we do only cloister ourselves in those homeschool segments, we're seeing others, the outside as other instead of more unified. And so I encourage parents out there to look outside of just homeschool opportunities. Both of my brothers were avid in baseball and basketball through our Parks and Rec, and they were also in the Boy Scouts. So these were not a homeschool basketball league. This was, Parks and Rec. So they were around other children who weren't necessarily homeschooled. And I think that that was so important. Same with me in ballet.
no, I love that. Beth, do you have anything? 'Cause I know I'm trying to get her to talk more in these interviews, but she keeps staying quiet.
It's hard for me to interrupt you. I feel bad. Uh,
I don't
I
take
was
it
just
personally.
okay. I just had two questions. One, and maybe you touched on this, but I kind of wanted to touch on it a little bit more. What was your original, like, if you want to share, your family's decision for homeschooling? Was there like a light bulb moment or a situation that came up where, you're done looking at private schools, you're just going to do homeschooling?
Yeah, so we'd have to bring my mom and dad into that conversation because I'm not exactly sure, but I
Yeah.
do know that my dad had a burning desire in his heart to homeschool, and he
Wow.
shared that desire with my mom. Again, I was in kindergarten, so I was only 5 years old at the time, and I'd only been in school until December, so
Okay.
August to December, and that's when they pulled me out. And then they did try another private school for me in first grade, and I did go the entire year.
Hmm.
But then in second grade, They pulled me out and that made that decision that they were going to homeschool us moving forward. And then in high school, there was that other. I will say that I had to overcome just some of my own perceptions of how I was being viewed by my peers because there was a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out on going to high school, and cheerleading sounded really exciting to me, and just different
Mhm.
opportunities like a prom and opportunities that high schools offer. And I do remember my parents in 10th grade coming to me and saying, "All right, we do have, our high school down the road. We want to make this decision collaboratively, not just we're telling you what to do." And so
Yeah.
I do remember that decision and saying, no, I want to go ahead and be a homeschool graduate and go ahead and finish my
Wow.
high school through homeschool. So it was a conversation between the three of us once I got to 10th grade.
That's great. And then just to follow up with kind of a side question, I've been seeing a lot of stuff. I'm a big reader. I'll preface it with that. And I've been seeing a lot of things about how in schools, the literacy rates are dropping and a lot of children can't read. It's a huge problem. So, how do you believe we should combat this issue, and why do you think it's an important issue to combat?
I saw it firsthand when
Mhm.
I tried to go back to public school in the fall of 2024. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
saw so many of my students who had huge learning gaps, particularly with phonics and reading. But again, it's a system issue. It's not the student issue because
Mhm.
I was handed a binder and asked to facilitate this phonics curriculum
Mhm.
that was not tailored to the needs of my students.
Mhm.
And so I watched as their eyes glazed over during those lessons
Mhm.
because they needed me to focus on exactly where their needs were and not this overarching curriculum that our
Yeah.
school system had purchased. And so, as a parent, I want to share that with all of you that the teachers in the school system, our hands are tied.
Mhm.
We would love to better service your students and meet their learning needs, but there's a lot of talk in that we're doing that, but we're not allowed to actually
Mhm.
do that. It's got to be the systems way in order to meet those needs. And so I wasn't even able to truly connect with my students and meet them where they were at because of some of those constraints.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's a great answer. And I think it too, um, I think so often, like, you can view everyone in the system, not you specifically, but I'm saying generally, like everyone who if you are homeschooled, you can kind of be like, well, the teachers can do they can do something else, but you really can't. And I can't imagine what that's like as a teacher, how frustrating, whether you're pro homeschooling or not, how frustrating that would be, that you can't individualize it to really support the student. I mean, that has to be agonizing, really.
Yeah, yeah, because that's what we were trained to do
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
school for my
Yeah.
teaching degree. And what we practiced was differentiated instruction and
Mm-hmm.
individualized learning plans. And they'll talk a great game, but what we're going to end up seeing is AI
Mm.
taking that over for our students. So it's no longer going to be personalized through human interaction. The personalized learning plans are truly an algorithm that is going to create lessons for your student in a
Mm-hmm.
very robotic way. And
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of students as a tutor. I work with a lot of students in public school, and I just have watched their motivation decrease further and further the more the school system relies on these AI
Mm-hmm.
charged programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's terrible. And also, just to think that they're gonna switch it over to an algorithm that you can just go into Chat GPT and ask questions different ways and get different answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there's not
Mm-hmm.
that real human, actual real response from what it knows compared to just the algorithm. There's two things I want to touch on that you said. The fear of missing out. Now that is something that I can understand a lot of high schoolers will be going through if they're homeschooling. And I'll say my sister never went to high school, but she went to 3 proms. So you can still go if you're homeschooled. You just have to have someone ask you, I guess. Um, and then when it comes to the sports, most of the states you're able to play the sports. I played for my local high school's baseball team. You know what I mean? I mean, my sister ran track. She went to the state finals for the same high schools. She was homeschooled. They still allowed, so you can still get those extracurricular activities. And then personally, when you said that you were kind of like missing out, I always had a misconception growing up that I had to overcome the barrier of me being homeschooled when I'm around other people. And over time, I started to realize that it actually was a benefit because I wasn't a weirdo. You know what I mean? I, I had a good amount of friends. Everyone seemed to like me. And it also turned out like when I would go to my friends' birthday parties, I was like the star of the show because they only got to see me when we were doing things like that. So it was like, oh, Dave, the homeschooler's here. So it was like super cool. You know what I mean? So just to reframe the thought of it, like it's very understandable for a kid to feel like, oh, I'm missing out on all this time. But at the same time, you're really not missing out on much between the time that you're walking in between classes. Like you're not able to hang out with each other in class. So you got lunch, maybe a gym if you're in high school, and then in between classes. And that's pretty much it. You get the same amount of time just being proactive outside of school hours with hanging out with people that you could inside of the school system. So I just wanted to say that. Now we are running up on 3:30 here, and I want to make sure I have you off by then. Even for the parents in our group, we have you on our website. They can easily find you there. Now, say there's a parent that's not in our group, they're listening to this though on Spotify or YouTube or something, and they want to connect with you to get your tutoring services. Where are they going to go to find you?
They can go to my website,
Okay.
which is, and maybe we could have the link
Of
Yeah.
in.
course. Yes, ma'am. Of course.
Yes,
So the
yes.
link would be below. I'm also on LinkedIn under Hannah Knecht, and they're welcome to message me there as well. But that's the best place to see my tutoring service. I have a
Mhm.
video where I introduce myself and kind of what I offer as a homeschool support and a tutor. So that's the best place to find me is my website.
And then two things on that. One, you do a package deal with co-ops as well, if I'm
I
not
do.
mistaken. So they just check that out there in the co-op. And two, what subjects are you offering as far as tutoring, whatever you're doing?
I tutor all subjects, K through
Okay.
8. I
Okay.
am certified K through 8 in all subjects. And but I do primarily tutor in grammar, writing, and math because that tends to be the current needs of what my clients need
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Now, the last question here, are you still able to perform the end of the year like surveys? I think you have to be like a certified teacher or whatnot. Could a parent reach out to you if they want you to review their yearly coursework to make sure they can get signed off on?
Yeah, so it depends on the state. I
Okay.
am currently certified in Virginia, Florida, and I just applied to be a California certified teacher as well. I no longer am active though in Colorado and Georgia, but I
Yeah,
think you have to be a certified teacher for that state.
that's
But for
what I'm pretty
those
sure.
three, Florida, Virginia, and California, yes, they're welcome to contact me.
No, and
That's great.
I want everyone to understand how wonderful you are at this. So if you guys need this service, you guys have to reach out to her. She is passionate about it. She loves working with kids, and she absolutely loves getting the kids to understand and comprehend the information that are there. Miss Hannah, I want to make sure I have you off of here. Thank you so much for doing this with us. If you have anything coming out in the future, let us know. We'll make sure to help you out.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to plug one other
Do
opportunity.
it.
I am partnering with Coral Academy right now to offer a Finance 101 class for students. I currently have 4 sections open, and I've partnered with Stanford University to develop the curriculum for those classes. It's a 16-week course. You're welcome to join in at any time during those 16 weeks. But we are covering all of these topics on inflation, cash flow, personal finance, even about investing, and some about Bitcoin. So if you've got a student who's curious and wants live interaction, live interactive sessions, check me out at Coral Academy because that's a great opportunity as well.
Do you have an age range for that, or is it anybody
Yes,
from
it's 8 to 12.
8 to 12? Okay,
Mhm.
perfect.
8 to
All
12.
right. We'll make sure if you, I think you may have sent us a link for that one as
Yeah.
well. We'll include that in here as well too then for you.
Awesome. Yeah, we just had a great conversation all about recessions and the national debt a couple nights ago. So I
Wow.
have sessions during the day for homeschoolers, and then I also have sessions in the evening that I have homeschool and public school students attend. So it's very inclusive in that way. And again, it's very interactive. So your student is not going to be watching me lecture at them. They are going to be interacting, answering questions, asking questions, games, all of that kind of stuff. So it's fun.
Love it. All right, Miss Hannah, you have a beautiful rest of your day.
There is another thought I had
Oh, let us
that
have it.
I want to share because this may be helpful as well. It was in regards to the fear of missing out as a homeschool student. And
Okay.
I know when I graduated from high school in 2004, I was comparing myself and calibrating myself to the homeschool students around me who were part of NCFCA and debate, and even my brother, who's 3 years younger, who now, as a teacher, I go, oh, he would have been advanced or a gifted child. And so I had this unconscious understanding that I wasn't smart enough to go to college and that I wouldn't be calibrating with my peers. And so I really encourage students to have the confidence to go to even community college classes in order to better calibrate and realize that you can stay up with those of your peer group. Because I remember my freshman year of college, that was my number one fear was I was concerned about failing out of college. And it wasn't because I wasn't prepared. I was definitely prepared. I was well equipped. However, because I didn't have that calibration, that's something that I really recommend to homeschool families, especially in high school, so that your student doesn't have that unconscious fear.
I love that. I love that so much.
Yep.
All
Also,
right. No, no, that was perfect. And to back that up, when I started dual enrolling my junior year, I actually recognized how smart I really was because I was now taking college level math and all this stuff, and I'm getting straight A's in it. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, I am as smart as I think I am.
yeah.
So I think that's a great way for you.
I had the same thing too. Yeah, I started dual enrolling in my junior year and I was like, oh, I can actually do this.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so myself and the brother right underneath me, we didn't know of that at the time. However, my little brother, the third in our family, he did that.
Okay.
And
that's great.
it ended up enabling him to get a full ride to his college because
Wow,
dual enrolled and he had started
Wow.
early.
that's great.
So it's crazy how that works. But if you have a community college near you, yeah, just even one class
Yep.
to be
Hmm.
able to calibrate a little bit and build that confidence.
That's right.
That's amazing. All right, Miss Hannah. It is now 3:29. I promised you to be off by 3:30, so we did it.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you again for this. And when you pop off, we're gonna record the intro and we'll share it and we'll make sure we drop all those links for you.
Sounds good. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much and have a great day. Just let me know when it comes out and how I can help market it as well on LinkedIn. Again, that's my only social media at the moment, but just let me know.
Great, great. You're not missing anything on the other ones,
Oh,
trust
no, no. I have a lot more peace not being on it. So,
me. I guarantee you do. All right.
all right. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.